What is the state of the Mavericks ahead of the NBA trade deadline? Plus, it's DLLS Mavs and Friends Day here on the show. A special guest, Jason Gallagher, and a couple of other special guests joining us on the show. All that and more coming up next on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. Here we go. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato. We are DLLS Mavs, your favorite guys, coming your favorite team every single day. Really appreciate you joining us here on DLLS Sports. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel while you're here. You can do the same for our podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. What's the state of the Dallas Mavericks ahead of the NBA trade deadline after getting a nice win last night over the Washington Wizards? The Mavericks getting ready to embark on a 5-game road trip starting tomorrow with the New Orleans Pelicans. Plus, it's DLLS Mavs and Friends Day here on the show. Jason Gallagher of the Young Man and the 3 Podcast. Nick Angstadt of Locked On Mavs and Austin Ngaruiya, formerly of the Only Mavericks Podcast, Tim Cato. He's going to be joining us here.
The only one.
The only one.
I'm glad that more podcasts exist now.
Yes.
Because our only podcast, that was the only podcast about the Mavericks, unfortunately is now done.
That's because you're here now with us here at DLLS Mavs. You can find me on X at Kevin Gray Sports at Tim_Cato. You can find him there for all of his fantastic work when it comes to covering this team. Let's jump into it, though, before we welcome in our all-star, star-studded cast of friends today here on the show with our first question of the day, because Mavericks got a win last night over Washington. Klay Thompson had 23 points, all coming in the first half, knocking down 7 threes in that first quarter in order to rout the Washington Wizards last night, 130-108 for their 25th win of the season. Now the Mavericks, Tim, going on a 5-game road trip starting tomorrow with the Pelicans, and we'll let you answer the question in the chat as well. How would you describe the state of the Mavericks right now, Tim, 2 weeks away from the NBA trade deadline, which is on February the 6th, by the way? On February 6th, join us at Cosm to watch the Mavericks taking on the Boston Celtics on NBA trade deadline day as well. How would you describe the state of the Mavericks right now, 2 weeks away from the trade deadline?
Looking up, I guess. I think that, good times are coming back eventually, soon. Luka is nearing a return. We have Mark Stein reporting that the team is optimistic. He's going to be back on the court before the All-Star break. So I do think things are going in a good direction, and I'm just not quite they're not quite out of it. You got to get through this road trip, and this road trip might not be the most fun at times, but it doesn't feel as miserable as it did. It doesn't feel as much just sheer pure doom and gloom as it did a few weeks ago, especially as Dallas has shown at times. Even though there's been some really disappointing losses, I think the good wins that they've got against good teams also still shows that this team's quality, this team's ceiling is very high.
And for this team, when you look at it, 25-22 after 47 games, I see Sarah in the chat saying cautiously optimistic. Luke saying injured. Yes, that is a very true statement when it comes to the Mavericks right now. But they've got a couple of wins over the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, it's been a little bit difficult without Luka Dončić over the last several games with the reevaluation of him and what looks like coming. Hopefully, by the time we turn the calendar to February, the return of their all-star, the Mavericks can get themselves in position with a decent road trip to be above 500 by the time Luka Dončić returns to the lineup. And one of the things we saw last night was a Klay Thompson performing extremely well for this team, getting him going and getting him opportunities to knock down the 7 threes that he did. Klay Thompson speaking last night on what got him going and how the Mavericks were able to get him in position to be able to score the basketball the way that he did. Take a listen.
I think there's emphasis from Coach Dudley for me to be more aggressive. and it just happened to be one of those nights where I had a really good first quarter. And can't lie to y'all, it felt great. It always feels great when you shoot the ball well, but just felt great because we needed a win where we put a team away early. It's been a while since we had one, so it was nice to kind of do that collectively.
What was Jared saying?
Just find him in transition or find him for an away screen. And not necessarily just to shoot it every time, but just to get some motion, get in a better rhythm. And, it was one of those nights where it felt good off my hand. And still a learning process for all of us because we got to have guys in and out the lineup. But I like that we lean on each other and we make no excuses for how to perform nightly.
There's two things I really loved about the performance last night. The first one's obvious, just the first quarter. But I loved how decisive, how quickly he was shooting. Again, this is possibly the second best shooter in NBA history. Just let that thing fly. It doesn't matter, how much space. Often it doesn't matter how much space he has, as long as he has enough to get the shot off cleanly. And last night was a textbook example of that. Washington was just a little too lax. They were not quite closing out or close enough to him. And look what Klay did. Let it fly. Let it rip. I love that Dallas was looking for him out of those situations. I know of a lot of the discourse that's been happening about Klay. Is he getting enough looks? There's been an idea that the Mavericks aren't looking, like his own teammates aren't looking for him enough. And I don't think, for the most part, that's true. I think it's very difficult. Like you can take a screenshot of a play and say, well, Klay was open on this play. I saw some supercuts of Klay being missed that were posted in various places. And I'm watching it and I'm like, guys, he's not open on these. Or if he is open, he's open because, only when Luka's on the floor, because Luka is someone who manipulates spatial awareness and understands exactly where Klay is going to be in a way that you literally cannot expect other players to be. But I liked how much Dallas was looking for him. I like how quickly he was willing to just let the ball go. In the third quarter, the second thing I really liked, in the third quarter, he leveraged his gravity and got several players open. I think once it was just purely out of a pick and roll. Can't remember if it was Gafford or maybe Omax, but just literally a slip screen. And because he's Klay Thompson and because he had the first quarter he did, everybody was so focused on him that he leveraged that gravity. Now, unfortunately, he is not Klay of 2019 or of 2017. In that third quarter, when Washington was putting extra defensive pressure on him, it didn't work so well when he tried to just isolate.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay because, and I don't think he's going to feel that pressure. I think in a game like this, of course, he's going to try to go get some more points after that first quarter he had. It was Washington. The stakes were not there. But, as Jason Kidd has said, Klay Thompson is a unselfish player and he's a smart basketball player. And once he gets in a groove, if there's ever any games where he's knocking down 4 or 5 threes in a first half, he's going to have the opportunity, just because defenses are so focused on him, to make those little slip passes. I don't want to see him isolate. Dallas doesn't need that. Dallas's offense, even without Luka, has been good enough that they don't need him, just trying to go one-on-one. That's not his strength anymore. He had that ability as a younger player. That's not where they need him. What they need him is they need him on the ball and making quick decisions with his gravity. They need him off the ball, and they've always been using him off the ball. But they on the ball, you don't want the ball in his hands for more than a few seconds because it's much easier to guard Klay Thompson with the ball in his hands when he hasn't shot it. It's so much easier to guard him then. And so the key is just getting him off the ball, getting all the effects of that. And that's, again, something that Dallas has been doing. And then when he is on the ball, just the decisiveness to either instantly use that focus that's being given to him within a second or two to either find a shot, just take the shot, or use the spacing and the fear that opponents have for him to go find a teammate with the way that defenses will react to him when he's, Klay F. Thompson, who's just on an absolute heater.
And last night, one of the things I really appreciated was getting him on the move. We know that he was with Golden State in the motion, being able to run around screens and be able to knock down shots off of movement. And you saw a lot of that last night, whether it be getting him out in transition, but also with dribble handoffs, getting him in space to be able to have the clearance to take those 3-pointers. And another number for me last night, I think I mentioned it last night on the postgame show, the number for me was 39, which was the assist that the Mavericks had on the 49 made field goals that they made. This is a team so far this year that's just 19th in the NBA in terms of assists at just over 25 per game. The ball was moving. Omax Prosper talked about it last night as well. The ball was moving around, finding different guys, keeping the Washington Wizards defense off balance. And as we look at the state of the Mavs going forward, as Luka Dončić hopefully is making his return as the calendar turns to February, we're learning that when this offense is sharing the basketball, moving it, getting inside the paint, PJ Washington was extremely aggressive last night as well, getting inside the paint, that this team can make some good things happen offensively. And hopefully the confidence of guys like Omax and others will continue to grow even when the rotation gets a little bit more balanced out when Luka comes back to this lineup. But we're learning some things about this team positively and negatively that we are going to be looking at going forward here. But I think one of the positive signs last night is when the ball moves for this team, they get open shots, and when they touch the paint, good things happen. And we saw a lot of that last night against Washington. Hopefully that's something that is a sign of things to come going forward, even as they get ready for this 5-game road trip.
Yeah, for sure. And Dallas can play the exact same way against a better team than Washington. And Klay Thompson might not get all those shots. It might be a 4-shot game. There are going to be games where it's okay if he gets 4 shots. I don't think at this point of his career he's dynamic enough to treat or use as a third scorer. I know I saw that in the chat. I'm not calling y'all out. Just that kind of spiked something I wanted to talk about. Because he's not dynamic, because he is not someone that I think Dallas needs to be posting up or, just running constantly, or he shouldn't be trying to create his own shot for the most part. Of course, there's going to be situations. Everybody on this team is able to create their own shot in certain situations, just about. But I don't want, I still think he's best in this hyper off-ball role. It's important to make sure that you look for him. It's important that Dallas does, run some of these actions early in games. I think it's awesome when he gets going early for them. But yeah, I don't view him as a number 3 or, he is just, he's a luxury scorer.
He's supplementary offense.
Yeah, supplementary offense, complementary offense.
Yes.
And I think he's awesome in that role.
And if the looks that he got last night were a sign of things to come, especially when Luka and Kyrie come back, hopefully Klay will continue to knock some of those down. I see some of the comments in the chat as well. We talked about how this team, when they kick and drive, getting dribble penetration and being able to find open guys as well. That's some success that they've had as far as the offense is concerned as well. And I want to get to Sarah's comment as well because I thought it was pretty funny. From Sarah Turner, she says, I literally just finished y'all's podcast from last night, and I said that we'll be live at 1, so here I am. Perfect timing. Laugh out loud. Shout out to you, Sarah, for being a real one and joining us here on the show. Less than 24 hours after the Mavericks got the big win last night over the Washington Wizards. And Tim, before we take our first break, we look ahead to this 5-game road trip that they're about to go on, and it includes games against New Orleans, Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Boston. They've got a chance to hopefully continue to remain above 500 by the time Luka gets back, but at the same time, going to be a difficult one as they get ready for this trip here.
Dude, it's a tough road trip. It's tough. It's going to be tough. Dallas has to get through it. I think the better times are ahead past this road trip, and I think that's the key. So, but you should be excited. You should be excited that this team that you have enjoyed, all the joy, everything that you're looking for in this team is coming soon. So, just like our guests.
Yes. We've got plenty of guests coming up on our star-studded edition of the DLLS
Let's go get to them.
Mavs podcast today. We're calling it DLLS Mavs and Friends Day here.
That's why Bobby's not here.
Not
a friend.
Show. Yes. When Bobby's not here, we can have all kinds of guests on the show. Just kidding. We love you, Bobby. Hopefully you're having a good time on business. Quote unquote Stephen Jones. But coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs podcast, we welcome in our first guest of today's show, Jason Gallagher of the Young Man and the 3 podcast, joins us here to talk about the state of the Mavs and how he's feeling about the Mavericks going forward. All that more coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs podcast. But first, let me talk to you about Sleeper, the best fantasy football league platform out there now. Allows you to put your ball analysis to the test by picking whether your favorite or least favorite players will have more or less than their projected stats each week. The Mavericks going to be getting back on the floor tomorrow when they take on the New Orleans Pelicans. Will Kyrie Irving have more or less than 30 points, rebounds, and assists combined? Will Klay Thompson hit more or less than 4 threes in the game tomorrow against the Pelicans. You can do all of that with Sleeper. The more picks you combine, the more you can win, all the way up to 100 times your money. Sleeper keeps you in the loop with instant alerts for breaking news and major injuries as well, so you can stay ahead of the game and keep track of league updates in real time, so you're always informed and ready to outsmart your friends. Bobby Carella. If you think you have what it takes, new users can download the Sleeper app and use code DLLS Mavs to get $55 in free entries when you place a $5 contest. You can apply it to any contest as well. It doesn't have to be your first one at all. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Make sure you check out Sleeper today.
Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. You probably have a style in your team's favorite color. Also, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by a lost or broken replacements. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deals of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
Appreciate you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast as we welcome in our first guest in our all-star star-studded guest today, the DLLS Mavs and Friends show today. He's an Emmy-winning director, and you can find him, of course, with the Young Man in the 3 podcast, Mavs superfan, and lover of the DLLS Mavs podcast as well. He is Jason Gallagher. Jason, what's going on?
What's up, fellas? I'm so happy to be here.
Self-clap? Are you clapping for your own introduction?
Yeah, of course. You know I love this.
Jason, I want to hear some Kyler Kelly propaganda from you.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, first off, he played for the London Lions, which I have a London Lions jersey. And that had a moment where I was like, oh, this is destiny. This guy's going to be great. I can already tell.
Who are the London Lions?
They're a professional basketball team in England.
In London? Okay.
That's right.
I didn't know. I think there's like a London in Australia, and I'm used to basketball players being from Australia, so I wasn't sure if this was like a London with a U sort of situation or something.
No. Tim, London is a city in the UK. So
okay, well, this is the first I'm hearing of that. I thought they just had a lot of pubs. I didn't know they had like civilization over there.
They have basketball. No, they have basketball. Sam Decker's on the team as well. So
that's right.
Former Wisconsin grade. Okay, there you go.
Now that you say that, I do remember this. This is coming back a little bit.
Yeah,
what's your vibes?
Yeah.
What's your vibes on the season right now as they can stand?
Foolishly optimistic, I would say. I'm not just looking necessarily at the sort of win column, loss column. I mean, because if you do that, then it's not optimistic. But I think that a lot of the losses were pretty close, games within hand. And when you consider all the variables and the sort of missing pieces on the roster, guys having to play outside of their role, and that I'm a firm believer that Jason Kidd coaches a long game and not game to game, which is a big, I think, difference between him and Rick Carlisle. I tend to have a really positive outlook if everyone can get healthy. Now that if is a big if, but games have been close, games have been competitive. What more can you ask for?
Exactly. I saw a tweet recently that was, I think, just spot on, and it was, the Mavericks can beat any team except the Boston Celtics and the Indiana Pacers. And there's like, and the guy's like, I'm dead serious about the Pacers, and I'm like, that might be true, but certainly more optimistic if they had a finals rematch against Boston this time around than I would be last time.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that seeing some of Mavs Twitter be low on Kidd, I think it's somewhat understandable. But again, I think he is coaching people trying to keep people within their roles, even if it's not necessarily the best game-to-game decision, in my view. And I think that is a real long game he's playing. So until that, I think it's just really hard to judge in the moment. I mean, I think Bobby actually said on this show, that's what you get with Kidd. You get guys bought into a system. And what you got with Carlisle is an X's and O's guru who could probably win you that really random game in February, but you just have to decide what your bid is. And I like that they've gone this direction of like, okay, let's stay within this strategy. Spencer Dinwiddie, you are always going to be in that QB slot, whether it drives fans crazy or not. He's either QB1 or QB3, but he's never going to be not that role. And I can appreciate that about Kidd. So
if Spencer went down, would they sign Tony Romo? Would they bring him back?
That's my hope. I can't believe. I think it's one of the worst things in the world that they didn't let him play in that game. If you're gonna do the bit, do the bit.
Committed to it fully as far as the entire bit is concerned, for sure.
I've tried to write a story about that before. Behind the scenes, what really happened that day, and eventually got stuck on some people who wouldn't. We're gonna talk for the story, and then stopped being willing for some reason, but. Man, they genuinely lobbied the hell out of the NBA to try to get Tony Romo in that game for a few minutes. And
I love it. I think more teams should do that. It's an 82 game season. Some of these teams are competitive. The Mavs weren't that year. Let's just do it. Come on.
Exactly. I'm with you.
Jason Gallagher joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Jason, I want to ask you, obviously, with this team just outside of 2 weeks before the NBA trade deadline, two-part question. One, have you ever seen an injury situation like this when it comes to a team, particularly with Dallas, with all the injuries that they've experienced? And with that, should they make a move? Do they need to make a move by the time we get to the trade deadline in about 2 weeks from here?
Yeah, I've not seen anything quite like this scenario, and I find it to be just utterly fascinating. Where you have the top of the West is full of a bunch of young teams that the Mavs probably are like, we're fine playing them in the first round, maybe outside of Oklahoma City. And I think that that's what makes this scenario so unique, is that I don't think Dallas is stepping into an 8 seed overly panicked about their position in the playoffs, especially not having home court all last year. So yeah, this is just fascinating. It's fascinating that we're in the 9th seed, and I'm like, yeah, I feel pretty good about the season and our playoff chances. That's like a wild thing. Can't ever remember that. And so, yeah, I'm feeling good. And then in terms of the trade deadline, look, I'm good with this roster. I really am. I mean, there are little things, but I don't think anything that's going to change the sort of outcome of anything. If Najee Marshall keeps getting sick, then maybe just out of pure, like, bro, maybe you need to get out of Dallas and just get healthy. I don't even know, for his sake, but I really like this roster. It's versatile at its fullest. It's very versatile. It's it can change, be matchup dependent. I really like the way they constructed it. So yeah, unless I just don't see a fix that makes us that much more material.
I was planning to ask you about Luka and MVP and whether he's ever going to win. But why do I associate the MVP with you? Like, I know you've gone on Kirk Henderson's podcast do you actually like talking about the MVP? Like, is this something that interests you? Like, why am I associating you so specifically with having like very strong opinions about how the MVP works?
Well, I work in basketball discourse, and I hear it from a lot of really smart people, a lot of national people that might just be doing things for engagement or what have you. And, I don't really know, I guess, how it became a thing, other than I'm totally comfortable arguing about it. And I'm an argumentative person. My wife always says I should have been a lawyer. We would have made a lot more money that way. And I hate arguing about real world shit. I hate arguing about politics and all that other stuff. So it's like, what's low stakes? What's something I can throw out into the universe, argue with 15 randos about, and then log off and never think about it again? The MVP. What a beautiful thing. And Luka, I think that the specific treatment of Luka last year broke my brain a little bit, and I'll admit it. I to this day think it's one of the weirdest things. I don't even know how to like really say it any more than I've already said it, but I think that really broke my brain, and I think it broke a lot of Dallas fans' brains, and we're going to see residuals of that for the next 5 years from me, my fellow Mavs fans, everybody's going to be on that train watching really closely. Are you really going to give the MVP to a 4th seed, a 5th seed? Are we really going to do that after last? It's going to happen for a long time from Dallas fans. So
Yeah, I
Buckle
mean,
up.
I was one of the 4 MVP voters for Luka last season, and I mean, I voted knowing Jokic was going to win it, and
Yeah.
that kind of sucks. It kind of sucks that like the MVPs aren't surprises anymore. You know, that everything has been gamed out, and that you pretty much know who's gonna win it. And I was very comfortable. I mean, I thought Jokic was quite arguably the best player. I mean, I thought he was the best player in the NBA last season. That he is the best player in the NBA, and I thought that Luka did enough over the course of the season to earn the vote over him. But it was basically neck and neck. So what was unbelievable to me is that Luka wasn't even second. Like that is unfathomable.
It was dismissed because of what you said. It's the sort of like the narratives get built early in the season, whether we like it or not. That is just the truth. The MVP also, a lot of, distinguished media members will like to say, playoffs have nothing to do with it. Dude, the playoffs from the previous season have everything to do with the MVP.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
It gives you the benefit of the doubt that other players might not get. You know what I mean? Like at no point during the rough Nuggets stretch this year did anyone even mention the impact on winning. You know what I mean? That phrase, impact on winning. No one ever mentioned that with regards to Jokic. And they mentioned it every chance they could with regards to Luka last year. And so, I think you had texted me a little bit, when talking MVP, will Luka ever win it? And my answer to that question is I really don't. I really think that his mindset should be championship, and not that it was before, but I think he's probably, as a fan of his, I'm a little over the personal accolades. I'm just sort of like, once you win the championship, all that other stuff follows. Like that's kind of the reality. It's not the way that I would interpret the award personally, but that is clearly the way that media interprets the award. So
and I'm not wishing for this, but it's quite possible if you are maximizing a championship that the best thing for Luka is that he never has a season like 34-9-9, playing, almost 70 games like he did last season. That just might be the case. He might be a player. Obviously, we're not saying go down the Embiid route, and we're not saying that, at 26 years old that he's, permanently cooked in a, not a, but he is an athlete who has, we saw how he was in the postseason last year. He wasn't his best. So if it takes a little bit, if it takes him missing 15 games a year and, not just maximizing or having to do everything in the regular season, and that's what Dallas is trying to do with the roster this season, that's fine. I do think that's a better way to approach this.
And I also think that the way that we all think about the MVP is just, I do sort of think that we've all probably put too much stock, like it is some massive truth that can never be unwritten. Yes, they were voted in the most valuable player of the year, but it's like, I don't know, 3 minutes in the playoffs, game on the line on the road, I'll take Luka over Jokic I actually would, because, well, one, it's going to be a more fun product. He's definitely going to be, but two, it's just, I think that he performs really well in high pressure situations in a way that I think that mental aspect of the game gets lost in the data and the analytics, which is why I think you see him come alive against Minnesota like that. So yeah, MVP is just a weird thing, and it's all, timing. Anyone who's watched the game for more than 10 years knows that the award is about timing. Luka had, his season last year, whatever the season was that Jokic got it with the 6th seed, he's probably winning. It's just all timing. It's weird. Last year was really competitive. And so I don't really begrudge anyone for voting Jokic, like Tim said. I might begrudge people a little bit for voting Shea over him, but it's neither here nor there. But yeah, anyways, I'm Team Shea this year, by the way, for MVP, for those.
Which makes a lot of sense. He's been probably the front runner for most folks so far this year. Before we let you go, Jason, tell the folks where they can find you, what you got going on these days, and where they can find your work at.
Yeah, great. I'm doing stuff for the Young Man in the 3. I've got an exciting, possible return to a podcast I used to do that led to a man getting hired by the Lakers. So that might returning soon. And then, yeah, you can find me on all. You can find me on all the social medias. You can find me in Tim Cato's mentions. That's where I like to live.
Or texts. If you can get access to my text, Jason Gallagher definitely shows up there too.
It's true. Anyways, yeah, but I appreciate
usually complaining about something that he's mad at.
Oh, me? What are you talking about? This is the beauty of being production, is people think you're some media member. I'm like, guys, no one pays me for my takes. These things, no one would ever want that. So,
well, Jason minds the game very well, and he's fighting the good fight in OKC as a Mavericks fan. You have a very unique experience being a super fan of the Mavericks while also amongst all the folks in Oklahoma City. That rivalry is, I think, one of the best in the NBA right now. And the thing I love about it is it's been an organic build to this rivalry over the course of the playoffs and now throughout the regular season. So keep fighting that good fight for us in Oklahoma City, man. We really appreciate you joining us on the show today.
Yes, sir. Thanks, gentlemen.
Bye, Jason.
That is Jason Gallagher, good enough to join us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Coming up next year on our show, we continue with our star-studded guests. We welcome in a frenemy of the show. No, I'm just joking. Good friend of ours, Nick Angstadt of Locked on Mavs. He joins us next here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. But first, you got to get yourself ready to go to the East-West Shrine Bowl, America's oldest college football all-star game, being held right here deep in the heart of Texas on January 30th. Be a part of history in the making for the 100th edition of the East-West Shrine Bowl at AT&T Stadium. Since 1925, the game has benefited Shriners Children's and its mission to provide innovative pediatric specialty care to improve and transform the lives of children. You can see some of the nation's top college football players in this head-to-head competition ahead of April's NFL draft. Some of the largest names in football have played in the East-West Shrine Bowl, like Tom Brady, Walter Payton, Roger Staubach, and more. The East-West Shrine Bowl has served as the starting point for many noteworthy NFL careers, including 80 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and more than 200 members of the College Football Hall of Fame as well. Tickets start at just $20. Use code DLLS when purchasing 2 or more tickets to receive 50% off. Visit shrinebowl.com to buy your tickets today for the 100th edition of the East-West Shrine Bowl.
Game Time is the first place I go when I need tickets to anything. They have tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. They have better value than you can find anywhere else. They've got all-in pricing, which is a feature you can toggle to show the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They have seat views, so you can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. They also have the lowest price guarantee. Or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's a great feature. When I needed tickets for a little concert I'm going to tonight, first place I went, Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DLLS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code DLLS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Game Time.
Game Time. Game Time.
Appreciate all of you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast as we continue the DLLS Mavs and Friends show today. And right now, we welcome in our partner,
Nick,
our frenemy. No,
Nicholas.
I'm just joking. A lovely human being. He's got his WNBA hoodie on. Shout out to the W. He is, of course, you can find him on X at Nick Van Exit. He is, of course, the host of the Locked on Mavericks podcast. Nick Angstadt. Nick, what's going on?
As far as the frenemies thing, I did tell Tim that it's in my contract that I can't be on a stream with Kevin at the same time. That was the thing that we wrote.
Really?
We did say that, yeah.
And after all that, and I complimented your beautiful hoodie as well. I thought that was better than that.
To trick Nick, I told him, yeah, no, definitely no Kevin today. You know, it was so weird. What a weird sudden absence he had.
Wow.
He got you confused with Bobby. I don't know. I mean, how long have you guys been doing this?
I thought it was Bobby that you had fake. Do you just have fake beef with every media member? I'm the one that's most deserving of fake beef with because I had the whole Only podcast bit.
And now there's so many of us.
Yeah, it's funny how like the moment my podcast ended, all of a sudden I looked around. There's so many podcasts that popped up seemingly overnight.
It's like you're not the only Mavericks podcast out here. Not the only
Came out
one.
of your own bunker. Everybody else.
That's right.
The bright idea.
Sad day for us Wings fans because Tatu's not coming back, but that's another conversation for another day. We won't talk about
Kevin, we got to do this now.
No, we're not gonna do it now. No. That's offline conversation. We'll do that.
Can't handle it.
Let's talk about the state of the Mavericks, though. They get a win last night over the Wizards. Shout out to Klay Thompson, 7 threes in the first quarter. A lot of fun to see vintage Klay show up last night. As you cover this team as intimately as you do, what is your state of this team as we get ready to turn the calendar from January to February?
The state is on hold, it feels like. It feels like we're just trying to get through this stretch. I'm sure you guys have been talking about that a lot, where the most frustrating thing about this whole stretch and this whole, honestly, season so far is we know this is a good team. Like, there is a good team in there somewhere. It's just been stripped away of all these different players all the time. I mean, Najee Marshall, God bless him. Like, this man has the plague again now, it seems like. And he's been out longer, and now Lively's out, and Luka's been out for this stretch, and it's been tough to try and watch this team and know, man, I know that there's a good basketball team in there, but we just have to wait until start to get some guys back and start to see some of the fruits of it. But I think we are getting to see some benefits of the injuries if you're going to look for any silver lining. And if you've ever listened to my show Locked On Mavs, you know that's what we try to do, is we try to stay positive, try to find ways to find good in some of the bad things. And I think the Klay Thompson game last night was a great example of that. How much were we talking about Klay's touches? He got 36 touches. I think I undersold it on my show last night. It was 36 touches over the last 2 games before the Wizards game total for Klay in like 50 something minutes played. And I think he got that in the first quarter with all those threes and everything that he had going in that first quarter.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to see. It's, I thought I don't know where you fell on that discourse. I haven't listened to your pod in a few episodes. Apologies.
You weren't supposed to say that on the show. You were supposed to wait till after the show to say that.
I subscribe and I listen to a lot of episodes.
Appreciate that confession there, Tim.
There are many of them, Nick. But yeah, I don't know exactly where you fell. I thought that the discourse was a little bit overblown in terms of Klay, and I think it's just hard to get him shots. He's not going to be creating for himself, and so sometimes there's just games that go by where it's just his gravity at work rather than him lining up. And it's like even last night, it's not like the plays they were running for him are brand new plays they just installed in the offense. They just ran them with a little bit more frequency, and they were playing the Wizards.
Yeah, they didn't invent pin downs between the last game and this game. That's not like what they decided.
It despite what some people online were seeming to say, yes, this is something that they've had. But anyway, it does feel like the sun is rising. Like, you're starting to see it. Like, I think this road trip is going to be rough. There's going to be some rough moments on this road trip, but I think it's going to be okay, because it really does feel like as soon as they're back home, if they can just get back home and get through this road trip, that things are going to turn up. That Luka's return will be imminent, if not even, who knows? Maybe he's back the first home game at the little afternoon matinee against the Rockets.
Yeah, they're 3 games over 500. They have this 4-game road trip. If they're a game under 500 and Luka then comes back, and that's okay. Like, I think that's staying afloat, which is what we all could have asked for them in this stretch. Those 2 wins over the Thunder we're going to look back at them and see they're so massive. Maybe they should have been wins over Charlotte and New Orleans instead, but at least they got those 2 wins too. And yeah, it's also, I think the Klay Thompson thing was good last night, but then seeing PJ Washington be the player that he's been. I mean, I was kind of waiting for him last year a little bit, waiting to see him expand his game a little bit. I think there's not enough time last year for him to do that. But this year I was worried he wasn't going to be able to do it either because of how many bodies the Mavericks just had to feed at a certain point. But now he's been leading the Mavericks in shots in a lot of games. He's been showing his ability to play make off the dribble, to get his own shot, which is not something that I think we really expected PJ to do when the Mavs traded for him, but that's been a big bright spot too, is to see the growth in his game.
And I'll also say, and this is easy to say looking back, a little bit selfish and self-serving because we talk about every game, but if I was given the choice between Dallas just beating every bad team and losing to every good team, or what has actually happened, but it's the same record either way, I think I would choose the highest highs and the lowest lows. Like I said, it's a lot of fun to talk about. It spices things up. Sure, the best case scenario is that Dallas just wins those games that they should have, and we agree they should have. But it at least made this stretch far more interesting than what I worried it was going to be when they had all these injuries piling up. And I just thought it was going to be, literally feel like a treadmill or like a hamster wheel that's just we're spinning, running, spinning. And as it turned out, there was a lot to talk about, and I think we learned more about the team this way.
And besides maybe the Celtics game, or at least 2 quarters of the Celtics game, and then the end of the Cavs game, I guess, they've been competitive in all these games too. We've seen a fight from this Dallas Mavericks team that has been really encouraging as well, that they don't just back down. It doesn't matter how many players they're down. No, they don't. Besides, I guess the Celtics game, what did it end up being? And not even a 20-point win for the Celtics. So I don't know.
It was 15. It was a 15-point loss.
Yeah, that's not getting blown out in the NBA anymore.
The second Denver game was pretty bad. Cleveland was a 12
that was 19
point.
Still.
Yeah. But none of these are even 20 points though. So
we saw a fight with them, and I like that. I'll take that.
We did see some fight with them. I want to ask you real quick, is Omax starting to figure it out a little bit?
He's starting to figure out something. We talked about that last night on our shows. Could he be a rotation player? I think the team is just too deep for them to do that right now. I mean, when they get their top 9 back, I mean, you're talking about a top 9. Maybe he's 10 in that group, but yeah, he's starting to figure it out. You're starting to see the confidence with Omax. One of the things that he did early on in his career, I guess the beginning of last year, is that he was able to drive and get fouled and to take advantage of some of the defense bending and the defense getting caught off guard by him, taking a dribble into the lane and trying to go to the rim. And he wasn't doing that at the beginning of this season at all. He looked so timid. Obviously, his shot is something that we've talked about a lot, where he's turning down shots. And is that kid trying to tell him to drive more, and is he telling the whole team to do that, or is it just him not being confident in his shot? But either way, we're seeing him at least knock down some threes. We saw that in the Wizards game. I'm going to count that he knocked down 2 threes because one of them was like a long 2, but it counts mentally as a 3 to me. So I'm going to count that one. And we're seeing him, get to the lane a little bit more. We're seeing him finish. We're seeing him not play so fast and sped up, which is something that he desperately needed to do. The question that Slightly asked me on the show, that I'll pose to you guys back: what would Omax have to show, and how many more times for Kid to be convinced that he should be part of that top 9 rotation in like regular season, not a playoffs?
An entire season.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think he needs to show a little bit more defensively. I think the offense has been better than the defense. He was obviously drafted as a defensive, the idea was that he was going to be a defensive stopper. I think he's in the right places for the most part, but he is not necessarily a stopper. He's not a point of attack guy who's going to shut down. And maybe that's not his future. It doesn't matter. At some point you just have to accept that if a player has not been that early in his career, and, mixed reviews about how good he actually was at that in college, then maybe he is more of a Maxey-like player who, can switch. Like Omax, I think I'm pretty comfortable with him guarding most players. Here in a couple of years, I think he's going to size up and be able to guard centers even better. And I think that would be really valuable. Then he's really valuable, like sliding over as a low man, even if he doesn't really, isn't really necessarily a rim protector or a shot blocker. But yeah, it's the offense that stood out for me the most. And so I think the defense is showing a bit more on defense as his path to fully earn a rotation spot. That said, you mentioned the offense, and like I said, I think he's been more impressive on that side. I had to look it up. I totally agree. Him drawing fouls has been a kind of sneaky, but really effective thing he does. And so I just checked. He draws shooting fouls on 20% of his possessions that are his. That is the 99th percentile of the NBA. He has the best foul drawing rate of any NBA player, just about. I've described him before, and I mean this fully positive in this context. He kind of sometimes looks like an NFL player. He has NFL player body or athleticism, and I think there's a direct correlation between that and his just constant ability to get into the lane and then just find contact somewhere. So literally 99th percentile shooting foul drawer in the NBA. That's a pretty fun thing. Needs to get his actual percentage up. He's only 57% from the line this year, but I think that can come.
He's not afraid of the contact for sure. I mean, there was a play last night where he and PJ were both in a fast break. It was 2-on-1, and instead of just dishing back to PJ, he went up for it, and you could tell PJ afterwards "Hey, I was right behind you, man." And Omax was just fired up and excited that he got fouled and was doing some stuff. And so, yeah, he's not afraid of the contact, and you'll take that. But the defense, I don't know. He was expected to come in and be a stopper, but to me, I think there are some guys that come in like an Amen Thompson. I don't know if you guys watched that game last night. Oh my God, he was insane in that Celtics game. Yeah. He's been so good. There's some guys like that are just the S tier defenders coming out. But I think some of the other guys, it takes them a little bit to learn defense because you've got to learn the tendencies of offensive players. You've got to learn how how NBA defenses are going to, or NBA offenses are going to try to attack you and things like that. It's going to take the game slowing down again and again for Omax, and the game slowing down was one of the big things for him anyway. And so I think we could still see him emerge at that. I don't think we've written the book fully on Omax on defense.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Shout out to Frank's comment in the chat. He says Omax is like, quote, if I go to the basket, something will happen, end quote. That is
true, though.
Yeah, that's how Omax tends to play. You can find him on X at Nick Van Exit, one of my favorite X handles on the Twitter sphere or whatever we call it these days. Super WNBA fan like myself. And tell Slightly we are not the other podcast. We are the DLLS Mavs podcast. You take that message back slightly from me. All right?
He did say that. He said it. He said it on the show, and I was like, Slightly, you just said that like they were Voldemort. Like we can talk about them.
You tell them that was directly from your boy KG.
Okay?
Well, that just means you guys are scared of us. On the other hand, Locked On Mavericks. Locked On Mavericks.
Wow,
Locked On Mavericks. We don't have any fear about you guys.
We ain't scared of no Locked On Mavs, okay? That's for damn sure. Nick, it's always good to see you and talk to you, my man. We'll talk to you later.
Nick.
Love you, boys.
That's our guy, Nick Van Exit on X, and Nick Angstadt of the Locked On Mavericks podcast. When we come back, we'll continue our guest-filled show today with Austin Ngaruiya, formerly of the Only Mavericks Podcast, Tim Cato. He'll join us next year on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. But first, you got to become a diehard member here with us at DLLS Sports and join our DLLS Sports family. Over 14,200 strong in terms of our subscribers here at DLLS Sports. Visit alldlls.com to become a diehard member for less than $7 a month. We got 20% off our events, premium content on our website from our guy Tim Cato, who covers, of course, the Dallas Mavericks. Our Cowboys beat writers with Joe Hoyt and Clarence Hill Jr., Jeff Wilson of the Texas Rangers, and of course Sean Shapiro and Sam Nesser covering everything for the Dallas Stars as well. We've got our member only Discord where we talk about everything from pro wrestling to the Maverick Stars. Anything you want to talk about, we talk about it in our member only Discord as well. And if you're a diehard member, you can join us. Well, you don't have to be a diehard member, but if you want to get 20% off your ticket to join us at Cosm on February 6th at 6:30 p.m. to watch the Mavericks take on the Boston Celtics, you've got to become a diehard member to get 20% off that ticket. We've got about 7 or 8 tickets left, I believe, when it comes to our watch party. Again, February 6th at 6:30 p.m. at Cosm. It's an immersive sports viewing experience. You'll be able to watch the Mavericks take on the Celtics in what is a terrific viewing scene, IMAX-like, if you will, when it comes to watching your favorite sporting events. I'm going to be there February 1st when the Royal Rumble is there as well. But February 6th at 6:30 p.m. at Cosm, come and hang out with us for the DLLS Mavs watch party at Cosm as the Mavericks take on the Boston Celtics. Also, make sure you visit store.allcitynetwork.com as well for all of our terrific merchandise, including our brand new Kyrie Irving DLLS Mavs t-shirt as well, hot off the press. He's on fire. Make sure you check that out. Store.allcitynetwork.com for all of our terrific merchandise. Again, you can also visit alldlls.com to become a diehard member. Get that physical diehard card as well. Show it off. Tag us on social media. Let us know you become part of our family here at DLLS Sports. Again, alldlls.com to become a diehard member for less than $7 a month today. As we finish up here on the DLLS Mavs podcast, we continue what has been a fun show today.
Hey, we got Jesus.
What's good? Listen, I love to have some great lighting.
Austin told me his lighting was going to be backlit, but you undersold it somehow.
The radiant Austin Ngaruiya, formerly of the Only Mavericks Podcast, joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Austin, what's going on?
Man, I'm doing great, man. I'm just so happy to see, after only being one Mavericks podcast, that there are so many out there that are really just thriving.
Yeah,
there are. I made this exact same bit on like one segment ago, and I don't think you were watching. It's just like,
oh, look, it's Katya. Look at there. Shout out to Katya. She's here in the house as well. Austin, what's your state of the Mavericks right now as we go through 47 games? got their 25th win last night. Vintage Klay Thompson showed up. We're just about 2 weeks away from the NBA trade deadline. How are you feeling about the state of the Dallas Mavericks?
I'm feeling unsettled. It's not been a fun time. The team is good. It's an excellent roster, but this whole season has just felt, the vibes aren't bad, but the season does feel cursed, if that makes sense. It just everything that could go wrong has gone wrong this season, and yet they're still doing pretty well. If they can get it together, I think they will make a deep playoff run. But the season has a bad, what do the kids say? Aura? It has bad aura. They're just the season is not going as according to plan. Hopefully after the All-Star break they can get together and get healthy. But I would just say it's a really just choppy season where no one can really just get into any sort of rhythm.
Yeah, and it's it feels like they're starting to come out of it. I've been talking on past segments that you got to get through this road trip. You got to get through this road trip, and then Luka's return is imminent. And I mean, if it's truly cursed, we're kind of just waiting for the next thing to happen. I am hoping, and it does finally feel like, for whatever reason, it feels like they've maxed out the bad news. There's only so much bad news you can have in the course of a season. It at least feels like it should be. I know.
He's like, hold my beer. Don't just hold on, just in case.
We've got a very nice long stretch of PJ Washington, and I would like that to continue to happen.
That's fair. That's fair. He's always been a pretty healthy player. Most of the people who've been getting injured have been players who have consistently got injured. Kyrie's got to stay healthy. Everybody say their prayers at night to Austin, who is in heaven. Everybody say your prayers at night for Kyrie Irving's back. That is the one thing that I think, that is the one fear that remains the rest of the season, I would say. But beyond that, I am optimistic, confident that things are gonna get better. Oh yeah, also we got a Kyrie Irving T-shirt that Tanner just dropped the link in the chat, so check that out if that's your sort of thing. But yeah, Austin, what's interesting to you about the Mavericks this season? Players, things.
What's your favorite
stats,
bit of the Mavericks so far this year?
Ooh, what's my favorite bit?
Is it the PJ Washington post up every game?
No, actually, my favorite bit is that Daniel Gafford turns into 99 Shaq anytime they play a lottery team.
That's
he just
right.
looks like an absolute god. Anytime they play, your team is bad if Daniel Gafford is just getting his game off against you.
Yeah.
That's a clear sign that your team is in trouble and you are not going anywhere. If Daniel Gafford is looking like 99 Shaq against you, he's been great at it. I call him just a generational bum hunter. He just goes out there. If you have bums on the court, he will come out and he will destroy you. You cannot put bums against him.
My man saw the Wizards last night and went ham with 5 blocks. He was putting Jonas Valanciunas on block posters. It was crazy last night.
In baseball, they have the Mendoza line, and so it's it's the Gafford check. Are you a serious team or not? Go check Daniel Gafford's stat line when he plays against you.
It's a good check. That's the Gafford line is a good line. Well, I'll be monitoring that for the rest of the season. It's a great bit. I hope he continues to do it. Hopefully, maybe he does it against some good teams. But for right now, he is the line where your team is either a contender or somewhat serious, or your team is really just kind of not going anywhere and doesn't really have any sort of serious front court depth. If you can't guard him, you can't guard in the playoffs.
I feel like it's a tie for me between the PJ Washington post up or the Daniel Gafford. I try to block every shot every time down the floor type bit. It's tied with.
They're both very good.
Yeah, they're both very good. Very consistent bits throughout the course of the season.
Also, just Jason Kidd never beating the He Reads Twitter allegations.
He's never beating those. He absolutely has a burner. Tim, why haven't you found this? As a journalist, you should be looking for Jason Kidd's burner.
I don't think he has a burner. I do think that sometimes things are shared with him that are being said. That's my best understanding of what happens. I genuinely do not believe he is looking at Mavs Twitter or any Mavs social media platforms himself.
Do you think he has a staffer that's going through Twitter? And is there an assistant coach that has to go scroll the timeline? Do you think they have a Twitter list and they're trying to figure out who's what? Who do you think's making the cut as far as things that get shared to him?
It's a good question. I just hope I'm not on the list.
Listen, you're a journalist. You got to ask the right questions. You got to find out. Then what else are you doing if you're not finding this out?
I want you to know, Tim, that was a professional way of dodging that question. That was amazing by you, the way that you handled that. Great job by you. Yep. He's like, what are you talking about? No, that was great. By the way, okay, the funny part about talking about Jason Kidd, the times that he decides to be passive aggressive and or reckless, like last night, for example, my man Kyler Kelly shows up for his first NBA game and someone asked him, "Hey man, what you think Kyler Kelly can bring to this team?" He was available. He's a temp. He's here because he was available and he's big and he might be able to play for us. And he got here this morning. I'm like, come on, dog. Like, that's all you got to say about the guy that is about to make his NBA debut? He was available. He's a temp worker. He's going to play for us.
Let's just say he might not be here that long. He should rent and not buy. This is the funny thing about Kidd and why also like Nico does fewer interviews, because they're both sometimes just like very blunt about temporary players who are here. Like a couple years ago when they brought in Kemba, and then Nico was like, "Yeah, his knees are kind of cooked, but we're hoping we can get some games out of him."
Yep.
And I was like, I don't know if you should say that out loud, but you're right. You're not wrong. Also, Kidd was just not in the mood to talk to anybody last night. Even his post-game presser was a little weird. He was just like, "All right, can I go now?" And I was like, I guess you got places to be.
Yeah, after I think it was 2 games ago after Lively News was announced and Maxey, that's as like as sad as I've seen Jason Kidd, I guess, for lack of a better term.
He looked defeated.
Yeah, just like
defeated.
This can't keep happening. Yeah, I just want healthy players. Season. Like he really was feeling like that, a couple nights ago. So fingers crossed. Don't make like everybody on the roster needs to look at themselves in the mirror and say, we can't make our head coach even more sad. So you got to stay we got to stay healthy. They need to make a health pact for Jason Kidd's sake.
They should. It's like the Count of Monte Cristo where that knight just keeps losing arms and limbs, and he just says it's another flesh wound. Like we're just losing one more limb at a time. Hopefully, eventually, we grow one back, but no promises.
I love this question from Sarah in the chat. She says, "Who would win a sardonic bluntness contest, Joe Mazzulla or Jason Kidd?"
Oh, Mazzulla is getting that. Mazzulla is a different kind of psycho. He's really just a real sicko. I honestly have grown to love him. What is going on? I don't know what's going on in that man's brain at any time, but someone who's watching The Town multiple times a day, you just can't. You don't want to get into a contest with them. That's not a person that you want to compete with.
Yeah, Joe Mazzulla's a different type of cat. And the thing about him is, I feel like he firmly believes everything that comes out of his mouth. Like it's not a bit for him.
Serious.
Yes, like he's dead serious every time.
I think he's doing a bit sometimes, but like Mazzulla believes what he's saying every single time.
Yeah, Jason Kidd is unserious, like to the point of bluntness. Mazzulla is serious to the point of bluntness. I think that's the difference between those two.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree.
Are you buying Omax? Is he is he him now?
Is he him now?
I'm starting to slowly build more stock. I had stock. I didn't sell any of it, but I'm slowly starting to buy more. I think the game's starting to slow down for him. If he can hit shots, like really, he becomes a useful player. If he can hit shots, not turn the ball over, he's gonna get a chance to play. I think last night was. It's also good to see him play well against a bad team. Like go out there and stand out amongst bad NBA players. And I was like, okay, you look like a rotation player in the NBA. It's just he's got to be consistent. He hasn't really put together a long stretch of games. He's going to get that opportunity here over the next 10 to 15 games. And I do think he is an NBA player, an NBA rotation player. And I have a little more faith in him than I did earlier in the season.
And like quite frankly, I think he's in the rotation the rest of the season. Like Maxey and Lively are both out.
Out of sheer necessity at this point.
He will be playing. He will be in the rotation every night from here on out. Is probably my expectation at this point. I mentioned the stat last segment. I looked it up when we were talking to Nick, but I want to tell it to you too. He is in the 99th percentile of drawing shooting fouls this season.
I love that. He was good at that in college.
Yeah, and he was at 81st percentile last season. He's increased it even more. Like these are super small sample size stuff, but like you said, he was good at it in college. I think it's a real part of his offensive game.
I mean, is he the next James Harden? Well, I guess we'll have to see.
Oh wow!
Did he? Oh, wow. He attempted a step back 3.
He did.
And so, last night,
he's well on his way.
Wow. Wow. Well, he's got to switch hands. He's got to become left-handed overnight.
And Ardell agrees with you, Austin, that the Count of Monte Cristo is a literary masterpiece. So he agrees with you on that.
Thank you. See, the chat is great.
Before we let you go, tell the folks where they can find you, man.
You can find me on Twitter at Ngaruiya, occasionally at D Magazine, and some other places. I'm still trying to figure some stuff out this year. But you can find me on Twitter. Yeah, talking about curses and where they come from. I won't get you guys in trouble though.
Well, we appreciate you joining us on the show, man. It was a lot of fun, man. We'll do it again.
Rest in power. Up in heaven.
Wow. We'll see. That's Austin Ngaruiya, formerly of the Only Mavericks Podcast. That'll do it for us here on the DLLS Mavs Podcast today. Thank you to all of our guests, Austin Ngaruiya, Nick Angstadt, and of course, Jason Gallagher for all joining us on the show today. We'll be back tomorrow with our pregame show at 6:30 p.m. Mavericks taking on the Charlotte Hornets on the road as they begin a 5-game road trip. So tune in tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for the DLLS Mavs pregame show with our postgame show 15 minutes after the final buzzer. Appreciate our guy Tanner making us look good and sound good. As always, thank you, sir, for our Mavericks.
Can you make us look like we're in heaven next show?
I want to. Radiance.
I'll try. Yeah, Austin was having a lot of fun. I want to join.
Shout out to our guy Tanner. That's our Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato. I'm your host Kevin Gray. We are DLLS Mavs. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. right here on DLLS Sports for our pregame show. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.